that. I thought somebody else had come in the room. Tom, thanks for having us here. Nice crowd tonight. All of you coming out to see. Have any of you heard me speak before? Okay. I do change it up quite a bit, try to put a different spin on things so that you're not, get something fresh there. I do want to congratulate the Middletown Historical Society for securing a new home. Some of you may know the Keyport Historical Society leased a building for $1 on the Keyport waterfront for 40 years. It was a steamboat mechanical shop. It served its purpose, but we always knew, because we know history, sooner or later we're going to get wiped off the map. Sandy came along and did just that. We fortunately emptied most of the artifacts, but we too needed a home. If there's a fate for museums, like waiting long enough to get one that's actually a train station, which is favorable for somebody like me, FEMA gave the Keyport Historical Society a $320,000 non-matching grant. We were lucky to buy the Victorian cottage, some of you probably know, 34 Main Street. The owner was looking to get rid of it. He was historically in mind, so we got it for a very good deal. It took us 3 or 4 years to fix it up. We did have to comply with a lot of things, as you will find as you get your first grant with Middletown. But it was well worth it, and we're up and running in 3 years. We actually got our house tour back on track for the first time in I forgot how many years, so we're happy about that. So enjoy your new home. I did bring some Middletown slides. Good thing I went and dug them out, right? Just want to skip over. I do like to know the crowd. We were talking earlier, some people were talking about they commuted. Anybody else commute, either by train or maybe once in a while to go to a show? Well, we know you commuted. You work for NJ Transit. Stand up, tell us who you are, please.
Marty Judd. I live in Middletown. I worked 42 years for New Jersey Transit.
That's why Marty commuted. I won't put another guy on the spot, but I know that he worked for the railroad. But he's not looking at me, so he doesn't want to talk. All right. Anybody else commute?
Just for entertainment.
Yeah.
Where to?
It's in New York City, only running from the city. We live in Red Bank.
Red Bank.
My wife and I do, so we just walk down to the train station, jump on the train, and enjoy a day in the city.
Got some nice Red Bank slides for you tonight.
Yeah, I commuted from 1977 to, about 20 something on the railroad, on the New York and all. Loved it.
Okay. Anybody else besides myself, Marty, George, and Ken work for any railroad? Anybody work for a railroad at all? Anybody have a relative work for a railroad?
My great-grandfather was born in Sandy Hook in 1872, and he was an engineer.
1872. Wood burners. No coal yet. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my great-grandfather worked for New York and Long Branch. It was the Matawan section of the chief.
Okay. Somebody has to fix the tracks.
My grandfather was a platform conductor on the New York subways.
Okay. Platform conductor. All right. So let's get started. I know you all know me. I've been around, I've been in Keyport and Monmouth County for all of my 72 years. I'm retired 14 years from NJ Transit. I did grow up alongside the Seashore branch, and in a safer time, 12-year-old kid, train stops, the engineer went like this. He just climbed up in the cab and they went, in my case, they went to Atlantic Highlands, they had their lunch, turned around and dropped me off at Keyport. Later in years, I got to ride the freight. Ironically, going to the train stations, and you'll see in some of my collection, like, where do people get this stuff? Ticket agents would save me the out-of-date timetables, out-of-date rule books, any kind of railroad paraphernalia, and I would put it on my bike and try to get it all home and sort it out and read it. And a lot of my education came from reading railroad rule books. This is the manual on how to, when to, and this is what keeps trains from colliding into each other. And I hope I have enough, but every one of you can take one of these if you want at the end of the program, as well as the tickets here. Somebody commute from Leonardo?
I don't commute, but in the summer we come down from Newark.
Well, there's Leonardo, take it up there for you.
Oh, wow.
All right, some of the items that we have here, railroads were very big on off-peak, trying to get you to go somewhere. There's a lot of flyers up here. This particular one is to This was to get the ladies to shop in New York on Wednesday. They would have a half-price fare. There were excursions, some of you probably knew about steam engine excursions. Big business taking people to the racetrack, both from New York, Philadelphia, actually coming up through Seaside Park into the racetrack, and of course out of Jersey City and Newark. Probably not many people know, but Sandy Hook Fort Hancock was actually a destination for excursions. You were allowed on there at one point. There's a Blue Comet brochure up here for you. Discontinuances, a lot of pictures, and some of the things you never know where they're going to come from. As a young person, I always went up to Matawan, but I would walk down the tracks safely and go in the tower. And that tower, these are telegraph codes. All the towers had 2 digits. This one just happened to be MR, and this was in Matawan. Bob Heft gave me this. Anybody remember Bob Heft? He was a conductor for a long time. You might have actually seen him on the train. Bob and people like him knew that I was a collector, so when they retired, it was like, here, Tom. So I'm very pleased to have this. I'm very pleased to share it with you. This came out of Matawan. This is for coins. You'll see that there's a spot for half a dollar, which nobody uses anymore. Actually, nobody uses change anymore either, right? So, all right, let's have some lights and get some slides going here. I hope everybody behind me can see. Tom, is there a way to get those?
Can you just turn those lights off right there? In behind you.
No, light.
Not that.
Light.
All right, this, the theme tonight is the New York and Long Branch, so we're going to start right at the starting point. First Amboy on this side, South Amboy on that side. This bridge is currently being rebuilt. It's the Raritan River Draw. They're building another one right on the side of it over there. In Sandy, so much debris got piled up next to it. Kenny, were you still working when this happened? Sandy? Kenny? Farmer? You go? So much debris got here, it pushed the bridge off its center, and they couldn't fix it to get more than 30 miles an hour, so they're building a whole new one. And the new bridge won't swing, it'll go up. All right, if you rode the New York and Long Branch, you either rode the Jersey Central lines, and these coaches are from like pre-World War II, and they ran right up into the 70s until the coaches that you were talking about earlier from the Great Northern. Many of you may remember down here there were little shanties. Somebody lowered the gates manually, no electric gates. And of course, the Pennsylvania Railroad in ~33, they put electric wires all the way to New York, giving them a true run and no turbo. These were typical CNJ cars. Like it just rained or something there. This looks like a school trip or something. CNJ did that a lot. Anybody ride those?
Yep.
Randy, you did.
Sure.
You did. And the other railroad you could take, as I mentioned, was the Pennsylvania. Your electric engine brought you from New York to either Rahway and then later South Amboy, and then they put on diesels for the rest of the run. That is my Uncle Joe Saraga with the white hat. That was his signature white hat. So this is what you see now as an engine change. After South Amboy, there are no wires. Okay. This is also an engine change, but there's something unusual going on here. The Raritan River Bridge had gotten struck and was out for 6 weeks. So the railroads had to make shuttle trains from South Amboy to Bayhead, and then you took a bus over the Route 9 bridge to Perth Amboy, and you continued your trip. That's actually a freight engine, but that's what was down here when the bridge got hit. And of course, if you were before 1958, you got to ride behind one of these beautiful clean steam engines. And that's the Raritan River Railroad interchange right there. It looks like some railroad cars and some people taking pictures. Very, very common because they all knew steam was going away. CNJ had a big freight train that was called JS1. This came from Jersey City. It was mostly sand. Those are probably empty and general freight. This went from Jersey City, actually all the way down to Bridgeton as a freight job. I doubt any of you remember the trestle that was here. This is where the shark attack was. Well, actually, the shark attack was right there, but the Matawan Creek goes underneath. there was originally a trestle right here, you can see the gouge for the river, and the customers became so nervous because in 1951, anybody know what happened on the railroad? The broker wreck. So the railroad there was a fire, and the railroad put back a pretty good strong trestle, but the public said no. So CNJ spent $1 million filling this in, and you still go over this today. If anybody's familiar with Mattawan, that's the M&T Chemical Company. Mattawan train station's right there. All right, a couple of you said you went to Mattawan or commuted out of Mattawan. It's an 1875 station. There was about 18 of them built off the same blueprint. You can recognize Red Bank if you look at that. Bridgeport looks like that as well. Mattawan, of course, was a major junction, and also there's big business with Parcel Post, U.S. Mail. That's what those cars are being unloaded up. That's a Railway Express truck right there, right there. At the junction of Mattawan, you could take a one-car steam train to Freehold. This is probably toward the end. Would have to be before April of '53. That was when the last one was. And here we are in Freehold. That station is still there. All of these tracks are gone. Of course, this has all been scrapped and everything. Did I do the right section? No, I didn't. So I told you I used to walk down. That is MR. That is the sign that I have, ironically. How that happened to still be there. The gentleman in the tower, although there were women in World War II, he was throwing these very heavy levers that in turn moved these rods way, way back here to throw switches. And that was so the trains could move quickly and the crew didn't have to get out and do it. This is obviously a northbound Pennsylvania Railroad train going through to New York. They will change engines. The Freehold branch goes that way, and Seashore branch, and the Parkway is right about there today. So again, the Parkway is back there. This is a weekend bud car train heading from my hometown of Keyport, taken from the tower. These were innovative. They came out in 1954. They were air conditioned. The railroads were having a hard time because the unions insisted on 5-person crews. That's for the engine. So the 2-car train you saw going to Freehold had 5 people on it, which very often outnumbered the customers. So this thing could just run from either end. You didn't have to turn it around. Engineer took his handles out, walked through the car, and away you went. We'll take a little side trip down to my hometown.
There's a sign.
Everything and anything came in from your local freight house. I have receipts from Keyport for West Furniture where they ordered 2 beach umbrellas, and they came in a boxcar. This was also a great place to play tag, but the rules were you could not go on the ground. So you had to climb up in here to get away from your friends who weren't agile enough, or there was a little ledge to climb around the back. The pier that used to go all the way to the water went that way. See that sign? I have it. I have it. The railroad abandoned the spur. The building became, you can see there's bricks on it from kids, damaging it. So the Board of Health wrote to the borough and said, you gotta do something with the station. The railroad said we didn't need it, they teared it down. I was in the Army. My dad just happened to be going by, and that sign cost him a 6-pack. It was a lot of money back in '72, a 6-pack, right? So, just where are we? Fort Monmouth. Okay, this is the not so original station because the original Port Monmouth station went to Belford. Okay, this was after they put that what was it, an overflow drain right from the Kingsburg area. Everybody familiar with that? They took the CNJ right away and they buried this huge overflow pipe. Now this became a, I guess Middletown helps its own. Anybody remember that? Yeah. Right? And unfortunately, I think the station was burnt by somebody not nice, right? So the one that's there now is not the original, but it looks like it. This is the Belford station, and it was in Port Monmouth. I could never find out why they moved it here, but they did. I guess they wanted a different station. Interesting here, this is your mainline track, and that platform, sometimes there would be something very small, like a barrel. So the freight train would pull up, but rather than uncouple the boxcar, the crew would take a plank from here to the boxcar and meander their way over and load it in the freight house. That, of course, is for coal. And those of you that are familiar, this, of course, is the Seashore Main Line. This track went to Red Bank. Because originally, the railroad just went straight through all the way to the pier at Port Monmouth, and then all these pieces got connected. This is an automatic signal, which would let the engineer go if it wasn't red. This, the agent would use to stop the train if it wasn't scheduled to stop. It could be for an order, or it could be to pick up a special passenger. And then down at the end of the line was Atlantic Highlands. This station got built in '52 when the other one burnt down. Anybody familiar with banking a fire in a potbelly stove? At night, if the fire was still burning, you had to bank it to the back of the stove so as the items burned, they didn't fall out of the stove. Somebody, and I think it was a relief agent, because I know the son of the father who worked here. The relief agent didn't bank it and it burned. So we mentioned earlier about the Bud cars. These were very instrumental. They helped us save the CHA a lot of money. That conductor is probably calling up for something. His train is down there turning around by the old pier. And unless you got real sharp eyes, there's actually a steamboat there too. This cabin was built because there were so many grade crossings, and because of the train shuttling back and forth, when they got rid of the manual gates, the electric gates would just go down and stay there. So there was a control box and one person, and then he would just watch the trains move, and then he would manually turn the electric gates on. Are you all gonna guess who's got the control box from that? And I got it from a guy in Pennsylvania. He went here when they abandoned everything in November of '66. And apparently him and his friends went up and they just took this box, and I had to trade him for it. I mean, I didn't get it for nothing. Everything's trade. But anyway, anybody been down here? This is the post office. Yeah, right? This all filled in here now. Pardon? Post office and the bank there. So getting back down, I believe this is in Middletown. There was a hill that freight trains that had heavy loads, they didn't have to fully stop at the red signal. This is a transfer. This is not a big freight train. But this hill had a special signal so that the engineer didn't have to slow down completely, because a heavy freight train from a dead stop, you might tear up the wheels or the rails. Now, a friend of mine, Walt Gosselfinger, lived up in here somewhere, and he would go out and take pictures right behind his house. There's some of the newer cars that Randy was talking about earlier. I do believe this is the race train. That looks like another engine on the back. And I see that the rear markers are on this one. So this is probably heading that way, but it probably is a race train. Anybody go to a racetrack? Nobody?
Is there a special spur for the
Yes,
racetrack?
yes, we're gonna go right in there, sir. Anybody know where we're at? What are you doing?
Middletown.
No. My goodness. Where we at, Tom? No.
Middletown.
Yeah, there's your new track fence. Your new station is down here, and your new station's there, your platforms are down there. It don't look like it would. It took me twice to figure it out too. But we know because there's a number plate on signals. So if we know the number plate, we can tell the milepost, and that is Church. Is that the street? Church Street?
Yeah, Church Street.
Yeah. And as you can see here, new modern electric gates have been put in. But the telegraph wires, some of them are still up there. I think the slide is dated '54, if I'm not mistaken. I got this from, I used to be a plumber in town, and a gentleman was moving to Arizona for his health, and he gave me a shopping bag full of slides. There was a whole bunch of his family sliding down the hill in Homedale, and 5 railroad slides.
Sleep.
This was one of them.
Right?
It's funny how you get things, right? So there's the Western Union side. Pete, weren't you talking about that earlier?
Right, exactly. Flange.
Yep.
Yep.
And this is built out a little bit. You saw it in the earlier picture that Tom showed you. This was so the agent could look out the side windows, because they were required, like even if a train didn't stop, they would mark down that train number 422 went by at 8:06. Now obviously the wooden steps are gone, but it looks like it's been elevated up here. And them cars, huh?
Excuse me, in 1967, that actually still had a potbelly stove, and if you went north, you would have also an arm for a package pickup, mail pickup arm, where the baggage car would just grab it and pull it in.
Okay, I have never seen one here. I've got a picture of one in Hazlitt, because unfortunately, this was really a minimal stop in the early part, but it was a big farming area. And yeah, if the train didn't stop, the RPO car had a special arm, and it was usually the US Mail put the bag up there. But I'm sure you're gonna want a copy of this one, right, Tom?
Yeah, please.
Pardon me, where was that located in town?
Say again?
Where was that building located
Still
in
there?
town?
This is Middletown.
Still there?
Oh, is that the one in Fort Monmouth?
No, this is the main line. This is
Oh,
the
that's
one.
the one the Historical Society gave you.
Yeah, this is the one that was up when Tom first started speaking.
Like you said, I think oh no, you said it's the original one, correct?
No, that was on a different branch. That was on, I'm sorry if I confused you, that was on Seashore Branch. So, these are probably nearer to red in colors, the yellow and brown. Not sure how somebody figured out to do that, but, look at the little bitty mailbox on the post. Nice. And Tom, one of the drawings or something you had showed a team track. This boxcar is sitting on what is called a freight siding, but called a team track, and that's because teams of horses used to back their wagons up to unload out of the boxcar. And they carried that name right through into modern time. It was a track that anybody could use. You didn't have to have your own siding.
The gas lights.
This must be getting busy because I see the parking lot is paved and there's, a lot of extra parking now. So heading off into Red Bank, everybody knows that bridge. This must be either a weekend or a midday train. There's only 3 cars on it. The 2 engines were just because they work better back to back. And if you turned them, you still had a cab at the other end. When I talked about those silver bud cars, with engines with a flat back, you had to run from here, so you had to find a way to turn it. This bridge has been rebuilt, I don't know, twice, probably at least 3 times. But it's the one that you always hear gets hit too. So this Red Bank Station, again, it's a sister model of Matawan, Fanwood, Mountain Brook, Branchport. Everybody was always amazed by this water tower. No matter where you took pictures, this thing came out. So you always knew you were in Red Bank. Anybody remember what that building was? Yep. And the railroads bought their uniforms from there.
That's where the gallery is now.
The gallery is in there now, correct. And the line that I told you before, remember the picture of Belford with the spur? You would have came out behind this Red Bank Station and tied into the next slide when we get to it. So a little dark, sorry, but this is a single doodle bug. Not only the Red Bank Station's right here. These are manually operated gates. That's a positive stop. This car came up from Trenton, and the Pennsylvania Railroad, it actually was gas electric. It's got a half a baggage. It does have operating controls and maybe about 30 seats. The Pennsylvania Railroad tried to get rid of it because it was a money loser, but there was a Catholic school in Red Bank, and there was enough pressure that the parents and the Board of Ed wouldn't let the railroad get rid of it. So mostly school kids rode this from Red Bank, and it meandered through Farmingdale, through Jamesburg, and then out through Midway and then to Trenton. They ran up until 61, I So going off into the yard, what does the railroad do? Well, the Blue Comet, as it expired, this is actually the Winnick. It's one of the Blue Comet cars. And I actually worked out of here. One of my first railroad jobs was in the Building and Bridges Department. And this was our locker room. There were, lockers and stuff in there. Unfortunately, nobody had the money to save this car, and it got torched and scrapped when NJ Transit rebuilt the yard. But this is what the railroad did with their old equipment. They made locker rooms out of it. So going down from Red Bank, I mentioned Farmingdale. Any of you following the new C&D railroad?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is my parent, okay. So this was jointly run by the CNJ and the Pennsylvania Railroad. The car with the kids ran across this diamond and then up the Red Bank, up the New York and Long Branch from Seagirt, which we'll see later. And the CNJ ran that red freight train you saw that I said was JS1, ran this way all the way down to Freight Street. So the diamond is now gone, and the new railroad has a Y track where they can continue, and they're running that as a private operator. Because Conroe didn't want to run any short lines. This is in Lakehurst, also on down Branch. This was one of the last passenger trains, 1953. Nobody was riding it. The Parkway had really put the railroads out of business. Anybody know?
Water column.
A water column for the steam engines, which the railroad had just gotten rid of pretty much, and threw the new diesels on, and 3 coaches was more than enough. And this is Barnegat Station, and if you ever wonder what kept trains from running off the track, they used anything they could. Lead trail, ties, garbage cans. Don't know if that would really hold it from running off, but maybe a rolling box car or something. I guess that was the agent's car there.
The end would be very exciting.
Yeah, right. So going back to the New York and Long Branch, we were obviously at Monmouth Park. 2 railroads served, Pennsylvania Railroad and the CNJ. If you took this train in, these trains are already been turned around, they're ready to leave. You went right into the grandstand and you got a package ticket. So if you boarded at New York or Newark, you would get your train ticket and a free ticket into Monmouth Park. I was lucky enough to still be doing that when NJ Transit was still running the race train. And out of Newark, one of the ticket agents came to me and said, Monmouth Park didn't drop off the tickets Friday night. And you never want to mess with gamblers, you know that, right? And the trifecta went off at exactly 1 o'clock. So you had to have your bets in if you were looking to win the trifecta. So we wound up getting a bunch of paper and stuff, and I actually had to ride the train and tell the conductor it was okay. But when we got to the racetrack, I had to tell the race people, just take these people in. And fortunately, he did. But I grabbed the tickets for the next day. So that was the only time I rode the racetrack. Anybody? Long Branch Station being torn down for the electrification. That was built in 1954. Second floor served as a dispatcher office for the New York and Long Branch, and ultimately the Southern Division. Downstairs was ticket, baggage, restrooms. Was considered a modern building. I think it was considered a Art Deco style at the time, but it was in the way of the new electrification and had to come down. Anybody? Elbron. This whole area is hollow, and the station itself made of nice stone, but it was very, very small. But there was a train club up here called the North Jersey Coast Model Railroad Club. In 1954, they signed a $1 a year lease with the railroad, and they were allowed to come and go and build a huge layout. In my time as a member, we had 3-day weekend open houses, movies shown at night, downstairs, the train layout running. We had raffles. One year we had a flea market out in the yard. It burned down accidentally in transit time. They were sandblasting. The model club had to move out, so they took most of the models and stuff, but they left the layout. Apparently they were sandblasting, somebody hit a wire, somebody went to lunch, and the station was very dry kindling, and it just burned. Easy one. Right? Asbury Park.
Lionel section.
So famous that Lionel actually made a somewhat of a model of it. It was, of its time, it was huge. Talking about reuse, this was obviously an observation car. This was off of the Blue Comet, and it is serving as the temporary Point Pleasant station because the highway was being realigned and the original station had to go. The original Point Pleasant station, not the one you probably remember, was also like the Madawan station, and it was sold and moved across the street and actually appears in some postcards in the background. This is an RPO car, and right there would have been the claw that grabbed that mail sack. The gentleman that mentioned about the mail sack claws. This car, when it went flying by, the mail was there, and the postmaster, who all worked for the U.S. Post Office, would be sorting mail on board, saving time when it got to its destination.
So one thing you asked-
This was the original terminus of New York Long Branch. There were turntable in here, tracks, and everything. This car wound up being picked up when the new station got built and moved down to Bayhead. No sense in throwing it away, we can still use it. And this is Bayhead Yard, where you can find Penske engines of various denominations, E8s, P8s. Of course, they're all P70 coaches. They ran, as I said, up until November of '57. Somebody want to correct me? Pardon? Now, when did they get rid of the steam engine? Was it November or was it in the summer?
April.
It was April, right? Oh, the UT Railroad still had a Pennsylvania steam engine. That was the one that got later, okay. Easy to get confused, good thing I have fact checkers in the room. But this was a haven for rail fans. And the railroad was very good. I mean, obviously today, you just don't know. The railroad, you would check in at the office and you would tell them where you were going and they would just say, be careful. And they would let you take pictures, they would let you cross the tracks. Obviously you shouldn't touch anything. And most of the engineers would ring a bell or blow a whistle, so it was pretty safe. So fortunately, a lot of people, and these are shops you can't get anymore, these are actually lit up like kerosene. Those are switches, so when you're bringing your train through from a distance, you can tell if the switch is thrown against you. So going back up to Madawan and then coming off on the Freehold branch, this is Wicketung. Two-car train again, going to Freehold. Station was there for a long time. So one of the reasons I like this slide is, right over here, there was this big white house. And in my research time, I must have been doing something by the station, and two people came across the tracks which were not running anymore. And they asked me if I like trains, and I said, gee, I do. And they told me the story that their father was one of the last people to catch the train going this way to New York in the morning. There was one New York trip as late as the 52 or 53. And if he wasn't going to work, she would lean out the kitchen window and go like this. And the engineer would take that and not stop. He was the only guy that got off. So I throw that in. Well, you're awake, you're not gonna laugh. So, that was it on the slides. Lights, please. Any questions? Got it, any questions? Bill, you have questions?
No questions
No
yet.
questions. Gentlemen?
Ben Forrest, Red Bank. I was recently in Madawan and looked at the train station, it's still physically there, but with a condensed sign on it. What, going on with that? Is there any effort to try to save that train station? I know that the transit built that other train station next to it.
Here's what I know, because I retired as superintendent of stations 14 years ago. The building is actually under the historic preservation. Transit has an obligation to maintain it and fix it up because they made it defunct when they built the White Station across the tracks from it. And now, of course, you have the Aberdeen Madawan Station. There was just no money to do anything. So I convinced our historical people at the time, because everything has to be done, but in the scheme of preservation, when water starts coming through, you're losing more than you're saving. So They allowed me to put up an asphalt shingle roof, and we sealed the building up, we disconnected the electric and sewer and everything, so, there wouldn't be any chance of fire. The lesson with anybody here involved with this, let me know, the Red Bank train station, the original one, when it got restored, was over $500,000. Why are you shaking his head, so you must know. That station is the exact one of the Matawan station, and coming up with $500,000 for an unused building, it's just probably no logic in there. Historically, transit is responsible, I can make that statement, because I was when I was there. How you get that going with this kind of money flow and, problems. But we did keep it as an office for a while. I'm pointing to my friend George down there. George is part of our team. We kept it as an operating office. I put a supervisor in there so there would be life and activity. We did everything we could. The Matawan police actually put cameras. There were people breaking into cars, so we did everything we could to keep it alive. But again, it was $500,000 to do Red Bank over 14 years ago. Can't imagine. Also, there's one second, sir. Also, there's a design flaw. The canopy skirt, which was actually a lead roofing, but the knee braces, they pulled the beams out. So, built in 1875, I don't think the New York and Long Branch thought that station would be there that long, if you think about it. But yeah, it's something that needs to be looked at. Sir?
There's a famous picture of the Queen of England and the King of England in the 30s. They had a picture right in Red Bank. They were in one of these coaches with the open back.
Mm-hmm.
In 33, 34.
Okay. Somebody has a New York and Long Branch here. I signed 2 of them, right? Who's got a New York and Long Branch book? I believe the picture is in your book there. I want to show that gentleman later. Question here?
The section of the seashore line that went from Islands down to Long Branch, where was that taken out?
Well, it was an early superstorm Sandy. From the day that the railroad built along that sandy beach, storm came in, 45 and, well, actually 46.
Wow.
They put one of the 2 tracks back, and then they just couldn't keep it up. It was too sandy. So the railroad was allowed to abandon from Sandy Hook, the Highland Beach side, down to just north of North Long Branch or something. So that's.
And the tracks going up into Fort Hancock, those also went around the same time, or? Because I saw the other one you had were the excursions to Hancock in 45.
So if you go way, way back to the 1860s, one of the first railroads that came up from Long Branch went up that peninsula by Seabright and all the way out onto Sandy Hook. And there was actually a pier to a boat to New York. The proving grounds actually fired, test rock bombs and stuff. And they decided around 1892, it was too dangerous to have a passenger railroad there. But the original railroad went there. So they built the bridge over the Shrewsbury and tied that railroad into Atlantic Highlands, which had already been reached anyway, and then built the pier there. So that's how they work. It's a real patchwork. I don't want to push you to do anything. I don't make any more royalties. But if you're really interested in how all that works, you got to read the Henry Hudson Trail book, and it just tells you how all those. It wasn't like somebody said, let's build a railroad from here to there. It was a piece here, piece here, piece here. These people got blocked. These people went over here. The Camden and Amboy was keeping everybody from competition. So, but it's good reading. And I don't make any more royalties, so I can sell. Yes, sir.
You mentioned about cars before World War II that ran the line.
Mm-hmm.
There's one of them up in Connecticut, and it's absolutely gorgeous to ride this little line. They have a car from New Haven, Jersey Central, and the interiors and the woodwork and the lamps and everything inside is absolutely
Mahogany. It was
Yes.
mahogany.
Mahogany and oak.
There are quite a few of the CNJ, the older coaches that I showed you, quite a few of them all over the country, but there's a lot. The Black River Mustard has some, Woodstock Railroad has some.
I use these all the time. It's a little railroad. At this time of year, they run a Santa train, and it's packed and it costs hundreds of dollars per person just to run the sanitary.
Coach 1158 is out west in the Santa Fe, and the 1009 is up on Black River and Western. And somebody's got it, I know you got a hand, you got it. A lot of times when the railroad was, particularly NJ Transit, was getting rid of these coaches that were headquarters, NJ Transit was looking to put up modern buildings. So they would ask the railroad preservation people, do you want the car? Some of the Blue Common cars were saved, some of the other coaches were saved, but they just couldn't save everything. So there were 2 cars up at Raritan where George and I used to work, and none of the preservation people would come. So I went in, I took out all the wood molding and everything, took out the prison windows, nobody cared, and I just kept them in my dad's basement. And then about 20 years ago, the Black River and Western were starting to rebuild the CNJ car, and I just gave them all the wood so they could fit in whatever they were doing. You had your hand up.
Yeah, in Atlantic House, I was born and raised in Atlantic House. I remember, and it's gotta be over 70 years ago, that from the train station, going back into town, I think that's Mount Avenue, and then going down First Avenue, there were tracks.
Mhm.
What was that for?
Those tied into the bridge that crossed over at the Shrewsbury. Those tracks were the northern end when they got thrown off of Sandy Hook and they crossed the Shrewsbury and they came around and that little area, Waterwitch, Hilton's, Bayview Avenue, that's where those tracks tied in.
Okay, so the tracks that go from Atlantic House to Highlands on the Bay Shore,
It's a trail now too, yeah.
which is the trail now, yeah, those were separate from what you're talking about going, those tracks that you're talking about went like down 36, Highway 36?
No, we went down along the water.
Well, actually, you're correct. Where 36 is, where the wall is, the jetty wall,
Yes.
that's where the tracks were.
Wow.
That's
Oh,
where the
that
tracks
one,
were.
yeah.
There were 2 tracks in there.
Okay.
Well, you see how close to the ocean they were, so sooner or later, a storm's gonna
Yeah,
hit
so I
them.
used to take that line,
You rode that?
yeah, as an early, my brother was 5 years older than I, and my mother would give him 2 nickels, and my brother would take me to the beach, down at Sandless Beach. Out at the beginning of Sandy Hook. So we would ride that down, and then cross over the bridge, go to the beach. Wow. Yeah, for a nickel.
But you were on steam engines, because there were no diesels down there, so you were behind the steam engine, I can tell you that.
Well, when I did it, was those bud diesels, the bud cars.
Bud cars.
In the early 50s, I remember a steam engine, when I was a little kid, and they called it a camelback engine, a
Yes.
real small steam engine, and the excursion boats for the racetrack would come out the end of the pier, I don't know if it was the city of Keensburg, and they would take these trains to Monmouth. But there was a whole bunch of these little trains, looked like a yard, I guess.
Yes. The Atlantic Highlands Yard that I showed you the picture of,
Uh-huh.
with the 2 bud cars, that obviously held steam engines, and the steam engine had steam engine time. In 1966, when the passenger service was eliminated on the Seashore branch, somebody bought the pier and chartered a boat and buses to the racetrack, but not the railroad. It was not the railroad. Somebody had their hand over here. I think I forgot it.
Yeah, when they actually built a new bridge going over, from Highlands, and they actually hit the old railroad bridge when they were fixed out for the piers.
Mhm.
They had a blast to get them out of the way.
Okay.
I know this is about Monmouth County, but you had pictures of Bayhead, but that wasn't always the end of the line, right?
Well, it was for the New York and Long Branch.
Okay.
But no, the Pennsylvania Railroad, remember I said the trains went to the, well, the Doodlebug with the school kids actually cut off at Seagirt, but there were race trains from Philadelphia that came up through Seaside Heights and through Bayhead to the racetrack. We just hold my thought on that. There were so many trains going to the racetrack when you gotta remember, racing was allowed in Jersey, and then it was not allowed in Jersey, and then when they were gonna redo it in 48 something, the CNJ or New York Long Branch said, how are we gonna bring all these people here? And again, not to push you, but you really gotta get a copy of the railroads of Monmouth County. There's a diagram in there, there was an entire railroad terminal in there, where you all park, that was an entire railroad terminal, so that trains could come in, unload people. Some of them, because there were so many trains and they were coming at such rapid, they would back the whole train out and send it to Bayhead empty just to get rid of it, loop it at Bayhead, clean it, service it and everything, and then queue it. Now, there was room to run some engines around and turn trains, but there was a Y too, for those engines that, remember the engines I said they only go one way? There was a short Y where they could turn some steam engines there. The racetrack was an operation in itself. Both railroads made a fortune, but trains came from Jersey City, obviously New York, Philadelphia, and Trenton. I'm sorry, I lost track of that. You get me excited. Do I have a time frame here, or am I running over?
I got about 15 minutes.
Okay, sorry.
On the Seashore Line, what year did this continue, steam service?
Steam was done in 1953. They officially got rid of steam on their passenger trains by 54, but in order to save money, I mean, I don't want to bring up the word taxes, and the railroads were horribly charged, over like 110% of value on an outhouse, if they had an outhouse, a coal dock, an engine. So everything the railroad could get rid of, retire, destroy, scrap, came off the tax rolls. So to your question, steam engines require a lot of things. They require a lot of tracks to turn around, or a turntable, or a water tower, or a coaling tower. The diesel, especially those tiny cars I showed you, all the engineer had to do was pull out his brake handle and his throttle, walk through the car, go the other way. So for efficiency, in the outlying points, the CN, like Barnegat, I showed you the picture of Barnegat with the diesel. At the outlying points, as soon as you could get rid of all of those steam-related facilities, your taxes went down. Of course, you had to have people maintain them too. So there was just a scale of economy with diesels. From what I've read, if I'm drifting, let me know. From what I read, when the diesels were really started to come on board in the 40s and the 50s, one diesel engine took the place of 3 steam engines because of the maintenance and everything required for a steam engine. They weren't that much more powerful, but the maintenance on steam engines and the facilities were. What did I lose? I lost somebody. Yes?
I didn't realize it until a couple of weeks ago. I ate at Cars in the Highlands, and I looked over and I said, that looks like a switch tower.
Mm-hmm. If you get a chance to go to bars, not just for the good food, they've got some beautiful, they're panoramic pictures, which took a special camera way back when, maybe 30s or 40s. Beautiful pictures on the wall of bars. You end up over here?
The New York Central had a railroad cut in Jersey City that went right east to west, and over to Newark Bay. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, their terminal was in Weehawken. The New York Central.
Sorry, I meant the Jersey Central.
Oh, the Jersey Central, yeah.
Had a cut in back of
Right.
Easy Avenue in Jersey City.
Right, east.
And went across Newark Bay to Newark. Is that the only place that went? I was trying to figure out because during World War II, my grandfather lived right near there, and he would take the train, because he couldn't get gas, and take the train down to Beechwood, the Jersey Central. But I wondered if there was a connection between Newark and the shoreline.
That was the connection. That was the connection. All the shoreline trains came out of Jersey City.
Right, but the one that went straight across the bridge.
Newark Bay?
Yeah, Newark Bay.
That was their main line. It was 4 tracks.
Yeah, okay. And that's the one where, I was thinking of the one where the light rail runs down.
That's true. The light rail is actually in Bayonne on West 8th Street, right on the other side of the bridge, yes.
Okay.
Somebody else had their hand? I got 12 minutes left. This gentleman here.
I think what he mentioned, thinking of, is the old connection at Elizabethport to the Jersey Central that went into Newark downtown. And they had a very beautiful station there. And the Reading and B&O also ran trains out of there. And that made the connection at Elizabethport and then it joined the rest of the.
Yes, but he mentioned the bridge. I know what you're talking
But
about.
the bridge, the one he's talking about is one that was open and the train went through.
Yeah, that was that one.
Yeah.
But yes, at Eastport, you could go up to Newark. There were trains right out of Atlantic Highlands that went to Newark, because so many people worked in Prudential Center right across the street there. Is that right? Is that what you're thinking about there?
Yes, yes.
Okay, somebody else.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I lost.
I grew up in Fort Monmouth, behind the station, could see the trains from the backyard. And I'll never forget this, my second grade teacher, Mrs. Wenzel, decided to take us all on a train trip. You rode on the lead cars a lot, I got a chance to ride it once. She took our class, I remember holding onto a rope to keep our 25 or 30 kids together. We took a tour of the post office in Fort Monmouth, and then we got on the train. The train ran all the way down Atlantic Highlands, and then all the way up to Mattawan, and then came back to Fort Monmouth. I never forgot her for that, because it was the only time I got a chance to ride that track, and it was a great experience.
Well, it's good. There's still some Bud cars around, if you can get around that. Somebody else had their hand in.
After the Bud cars stopped and the freight train still went to American Lumber in Atlantic Highlands.
Yes.
I went to Bay Shore Middle School, and we'd come out of school, and every once in a while, there'd be a freight train coming out from American Lumber. And we'd come out of school, it ran really slow. We'd hop on it and take it up to the Carvel.
Turn that camera off.
Carvel in Belleville, and get ice cream, and then have to walk all the way back home again.
Ice cream's always worth it. Yes, sir.
The street was Easttown, Tinton Avenue, outside of the Fort Monmouth West Street. There's a house over there that has two very high lights
Oh, yeah.
and a concrete fence in front of it. I've heard that those were remnants that came out of Penn Station when it was demolished in 1963. And that house was owned by some principal of the Jersey Central Railroad. And it sort of abuts that section of the CNJ that ran, line to Freehold.
Anybody? Got me on that one.
Is there, I've kind of had it confirmed by one or two people that that is the case. I've taken some pictures of it, unfortunately I don't have it, but it's on Tinton Avenue, I would say, about a block west out of the Fort Monmouth West Gate.
Beyond Southern
Yeah. Everyone knows where 35 and Throckmorton cross, right by that little lake and the waterfall? Throckmorton had tracks down it that got reopened during World War II so that the troop trains could come up from South Jersey and go right into Fort Monmouth. And I actually inherited paperwork where as soon as the war was over, because the trains were so heavy, people's chandeliers fell off their roof because the trains were like shaking up the street and everything, so, yes, sir.
Those lights you were talking about, the house was owned by our former mayor on Tinton Avenue.
Right.
Those lights came out of Penn Station.
They did.
Yes,
Okay.
they did.
And the concrete fence.
Yes, yep.
Penn Station, New York?
Penn Station, New York.
Yes.
He had some relation.
That was the last of the town branch we had, goes through Fort Monmouth.
You're gonna stress me on that one, town branch.
Yeah,
I don't think other than Fort Monmouth, there were any customers, so. There might have been, I think, right off the main line, not far at all, I think JCP&L got telephone poles or something.
Yeah,
but I don't
there was a
remember.
lot taken out.
So who have we heard from? I'll make sure we give everybody a chance here. Yes.
The broker, 1951,
Mm-hmm.
did that depart from Jersey City?
We parted from Exchange Place area, right?
Exchange,
Right, those are
okay.
Exchange Places. It's hard to envision, but there was actually a huge trestle covering Montgomery Avenue, I believe. Was a 3 or 4 train trestle, right?
The original Pennsylvania Railroad terminal was in Jersey City, and that's
Right.
where the broker ran from.
Right.
And you could do it, if you timed it properly, which I did out with the phone bar, you could ride an H&M train and open the back window and take a picture of the steamer, of the K-4 pulling that train out, because it came roaring through Journal Square. And then it went out through and then continued on, and then either went off the track in Milton.
The tubes that because the tubes, as they were called by some, was actually owned by the Pennsylvania Railroad at one point. So they were pushed onto the Port Authority so that they could make room for the Aldine plan, and it gets complicated after that. It isn't fun after that.
I lived in Woodbridge when the broker went off the trestle, right near the, where they were building the parkway, and they had temporary, I was a young kid, but I remember there was a Hudson 464 engine, and it was rolling on its side, all the coal came out, and this was in the evening. And one of my buddies lived right on, I think it was called Fulton Street at the time, and they opened up his house and all the wounded people would come in. It was an unbelievable thing. But one of the interesting things I wanted to say, history-wise, in Perth Amboy, there was a lot, when I was a kid, we had a store called Fishkins, and it was one of the best train stores, vinyl trains, in the whole area, and they would have phenomenal layouts, and kids really got interested in trains in those days.
Since you brought it up, I was gonna ask you, how many Lionels do you own?
I don't.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
I was HO, I was an HO.
Oh,
HO.
small.
Well, HO, but now I'm doing GC. Actually, it's kind of a funny thing, I always did model
No,
trains,
it's
and
not.
HO is convenient, have a nice size layout, it's convenient when you go in the Army. In 1985, I got a management job with NJ Transit, and you'll find that when you work for a railroad, modeling doesn't become that interesting anymore. You're working with your real You're lucky, you can ride the engine for work, you get to meet some great people, some of them are in the room tonight. So, what's the other question? Oh, the broker. If any of you get a chance, Gordon Bond, good friend of mine, he did a in-depth study of that, and even if you don't care about railroads, the human failure, what he called it, the intricacies of the human mind, and who remembered what, and who didn't do what, and who was looking for a yellow signal that the M&W people said, well, down here we don't use that. Even if you don't like trains, either watch the video or get the book. It's really well worth it. And to this day, much as the train that went off the bridge in Newark with the CNJ in '58 and the broker, failure stopped the train. Not really a good reason, because nobody wants to do what they did.
Gordon Bond gave a presentation here on his book, Man.
Oh, he did, okay.
Great job, great book.
Hope some of you almost got to see that there. I think we got a few minutes left. Anybody? That I not?
What's the name of that book?
Excuse me?
The name of the book?
Man Failure.
Man failure.
Man failure.
That's what I said, it's really, so I do this somewhat often. Is there some area that you'd like me to expand on next time I talk? Because I almost never do the same talk twice, which my founder wishes I would, but I'm sorry, Bill.
So I'm still in search of pictures of Brielle and Deal Station beyond what you have in any of your books. Do you have any slides hiding somewhere of Brielle or Deal?
Those are tough. You know that.
Very much so.
Well, let's talk. I don't think I do, but I just purchased a large amount of slides from Morning Sun Book. They went out of business.
Jack Slot?
And, pardon?
Jack Rossett slides?
No, but I know who does. So
Yeah.
why don't we talk? Okay. Yes,
Tom?
What was the local trolley company that went around here? Like Petersburg, Red Bank, all of them?
In Middletown, you would have had the Jersey Central traction up to Campbell's Junction, then in Red Bank, it was the Monmouth traction or
Should have built the
something.
map
It was
of
Jersey
that.
Central traction
From
from
today.
the Perth Amboy Keyboard right down to the Atlantic Highlands area. They actually used the Stone Church branch, CNJ for a while.
Do you have a lot of slides on that or no?
If you want.
I have black and whites. Trolleys or slides are done. You know, black and whites.
You want a suggestion for another talk? It could be lesser known railroads of Monmouth County, like Pemberton and Hightstown, the original Freehold and Jamesburg. Might be hard to get 35 millimeter slides, but of course you can make slides from copy prints. The Long Branch and Seashore, which of course CNJ took over, so there's a possibility.
I'm sure all of you would like me to get out of the slide hour, right? I mean, you can see them, right? You can see them. I need to get into the, yes, sir.
I second the Hightstown because I grew up in Hightstown, so I had the trains for a little while until the tour was down. It's all free. I don't think there's any passenger lines when I was alive, so.
Tom, you want to talk about?
I do. I think it's from Hightstown, yeah.
You want to talk about what you have on the table?
What do I have on the table? All right, well, we showed you the Madeline sign. Somebody was mentioning camelbacks. We do have a picture of camelbacks here. Who was the one talking about the trains going along the Seabright? We have a picture of what looks like a lot of storm damage for you, some Bud cars. There's a lot of C&J engines. We talked about the Sandy Hook boats. This is actually out of a magazine. One thing I can say about the Reading and the C&J Railroad, they talk to their employees. You hear a lot about that today with, do companies take care of their employees? They published a magazine that was about the employees. So you could open this up and go, hey, there's Joe from the Sandy Hook, or there's Mary from Bethlehem train station. So they were very good about that stuff. But this is great for historians. This is great. You can do your own book. This is where you get these things. The Blue County brochure, we were lucky enough to get reprints from an original. I tried for years to get one of these. Ironically, when I was raising 2 kids, there was one for sale for $8. Wow. It had a little tear in it. I'm like, but on $8. Well, they said, eventually they went for $150, but I managed to buy a new one for like $80, and then a friend of mine was able to run them off. So that's up here for you to see. And never say never. A good friend of mine, I'll tell you about the a good friend of mine, and Roger Brown, remember Roger Brown, George? Roger Brown from Signal Department, remember him? Yeah. He passed away, he was 90-some years old, good friend of ours. There's a group called the C&J Vets, I know I'm running out of time. There's a group called the C&J Vets, we still meet. We are 1903, we're the oldest